Yeah,
it's even the farther you dig into the plausibility of it, it's like it's worse and worse and scarier and scarier. Like, God damn it.
Yeah.
We've all been going through 2020. We don't want to see what 2021's going to turn into.
Right. Yeah, let's cross that when it gets here, I guess.
Fuck.
Hey, El Toddo.
What's going on?
We got a podcast, The Buff and the Blazer. If I was a listener, where would I go to find more?
You can check us out on our website, thebuffandtheblazer.com. Drew over there writes a article that goes along with every single episode.
You can find all kinds of little extras on the articles, and you can listen to the podcast right there. Also, you can subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And, of course, we're on Twitter at Buff and Blazer. Follow us there.
Get those clicks, people.
The Buff and the Blazer.
Welcome to the Buff and the Blazer, episode 40. My name is Drew, and as always, I'm here with the awesome Mr. El Toddo.
What's going on, dude?
What's going on, man?
Nothing.
Yeah.
Starting to feel like fall a little bit where I'm at.
Yeah. Fires are starting to die down a little bit.
Yeah.
At least we can breathe outside.
Yeah. But they're coming back. It's going to get windy.
Yeah, lots of fun stuff headed our way. We got a little film to talk about this week. I think it's an interesting one. We're going to be discussing Antebellum for our 40th episode. Directed by Gerard Bush, Christopher Renz, and starring the awesome Janelle Monáe in this role, I have to say.
It's a heavy bag to carry.
There's a lot going on. Yeah, there's a lot going on in this movie. And let's not waste any time. What did you think about Antebellum?
So it was, I got to preface everything and say, like, what I was expecting was a really epic psychological horror movie, like in the vein of Get Out. I haven't seen Get Out, but the hype that I've heard from it, from basically everyone I've talked to.
Right.
So I was expecting something along those lines. And it kind of goes that route, but it also, like, kind of dips its foot into, like, the current political, social climate drama kind of bucket.
Sure.
And it's a pretty hard watch, just from like a brutality and a racism standpoint. And it's really good from a technical standpoint, like all the film work and like the cinematography and the shots and stuff are all really good, and the acting is really good. But it kind of like left me hanging a little bit on the overall kind of come together of everything.
Okay.
Both on a psychological side and on a message side.
Yeah.
And just a little bit conflicted, you know?
Yeah. Well, I'll ask you a little bit about that once we get into kind of the structure of this. Like, we won't give any plot details away.
Yeah, this will be a no spoilers episode because it's like kind of a twist. There's a big twist in the movie, and you can't really talk about that and not give it away, right?
Right. I think we'll try and do a little bit of like a general structure thing, and I'll ask you some questions about that.
What about you? What's your overall?
So, when I first watched it, I really thought it was effective because
made me feel like shit in terms of like effective.
Yeah, sure. It is very difficult to watch at moments. It's it can make you pretty angry, actually. And I kind of view it, if you can view it strictly as a horror film, I think this movie works a little bit better than if you take it as a film that is specifically made to just tell a message.
Okay.
And I see that the way it's set up, though, you're almost like you have no choice but to look at it that way.
Yeah.
Because it's very topical.
Yeah, some of the imagery is speaking like literally to this year in politics, right?
Yeah. So in that sense, I can understand a lot of the criticism that the movie's getting, but I do think it has some elements within the horror genre that make it interesting if we look at it through a lens of strictly a horror film.
Okay.
And I'm working on the article right now, but I do kind of I think it's in a vein in terms of horror similar to Midsummer, in that what you're getting, at least visually and topically, is not necessarily what the film turns out to be at the end with its twist. So like Midsummer, it's in a similar vein, but of course the themes in this film are much different and complex because they're also historical. So it's kind of a complicated one, I think. So
yeah, that's a easy way to put it. Complicated.
Yeah, I don't really know exactly where I fall in terms of... I definitely don't love it, but I don't hate it either. Because I think it has a place, but we'll get into that a little bit.
I'm kind of right there with you. Like,
yeah,
from a brutal horror movie violence type of standpoint, it hits all the check boxes, right?
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about, before we went in to watch it, were you aware of anything in terms of what this movie was about, or did you watch any of the trailers going into this?
No, I knew Jordan Peele was attached to it in some way or another. And
okay.
even though I haven't seen any of his masterpiece horror movies, I hear they're epic, and so I was just like, all right, well, this is the newest one. Good way to kick it off. But I know he didn't direct it or anything, right? He was just a producer.
No, he was a producer of this one.
Yeah.
Which is, I mean, it was hyped up quite a bit because you had him attached.
Well, that's the thing,
Janelle
right?
Monáe, too.
It could be kind of work against it to attach his name to it, because that's what people were expecting. People like me who I haven't even seen his other ones. I just hear how great they are.
Yeah, like Get Out is intense and it's awesome. So like you, I mean, I was drawn to it strictly because of Jordan Peele. So I hadn't watched the trailer going into the film. I had a kind of an idea of what the film might be about. So initially I thought that this film crazily had something to do with like almost like a psychological time travel kind of deal.
Yeah,
where like someone is experiencing events that happened in the past but is living in the present, and some kind of like, I don't know if it's a supernatural element or if it's like, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, totally.
I kind of had that sense.
Me too.
So once the film
especially
ended,
at the end of the first act, right? Like we could talk around it. At the end of the first act, everything changes, right?
Yeah,
so
for sure.
When that happened, I thought things were going to get weirder.
Yeah.
And they really didn't, right? They kind of almost like simplified after that.
Yeah. And in fact, it simplifies so much that you're like, that's what they were trying to do.
And it's depressing at how much it simplifies.
Right.
That it dips way farther into the drama and the social message.
Yeah.
With the whole twist of the movie, and then that kind of brings you back into this, year that we're all living in that's crazy and getting crazier, and that's like not really I want to get thrust into.
Yeah.
Watching a movie, I guess.
Yeah, and I understand that's where like the heavy aspect of this movie comes into play. But I will say I watched the trailer after I saw the film, and I wonder if my expectations would have been better off had I done that.
Okay.
Because when you watch the trailer, it sets it up like, I'd say 70% of the trailer is all imagery from the modern present day.
Oh.
So doing that, and then the way like the titles come in and give you a little bit of like a snippet of what it's about, it's almost like they give you the plot of the film in the trailer.
Okay.
So that was interesting because I was expecting something a little bit different. Now, another thing I'll say about this film is that you can almost view it, because the way it's set up, you can almost view it as two separate films.
Yeah.
So the first half almost plays like this semi-historical, dramatic film, like intense drama. The second half is where I think the horror element starts to pick up more. And I think because they decided to do that, that's why you have this confusion of what is this movie and what is it really trying to say? Because the second half of the film, that's the part where I thought, oh, this is kind of clever because strictly in terms of horror, that's an interesting story. Like the way where they are,
Yeah.
where that place is, and what their overall goal is, that's interesting in the genre of horror. But the first half of the film, I thought I was watching like a historical drama, like 10 Years a Slave or something.
Yeah.
And while I think it's clever, it might be a clever way of trying to package a message that's topical. I think that's where the problem is that a lot of people have about this film, is that you should go one way or the other and try not to confuse your message in this like mixing of a horror film and drama.
Okay.
Because the themes are really heavy.
Super heavy, man.
And that leads me to like my last question, which I wonder if I should just ask you this now, but taking what I said into consideration, does a film with these kind of topics, like these historical topics, do they have a place in the horror genre? Like, should that even be messed with in the horror genre?
Oh. I didn't even think of that.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is like it shouldn't, the messages shouldn't be conflated. Like a horror movie should be strictly horror, and historical dramas should be the message builders.
Yeah. So basically, it's like this content is already horrific and awful by itself, like on its own.
Yeah.
Do we need to turn it into a horror film? Does it have a place in the horror genre? Is that necessary? Is that the right thing to do?
Okay, like a touchy subject kind of
Yeah.
thing. Okay.
And I'm not necessarily answering that question in this article I'm working on. I'm taking it more from a standpoint of if you're looking at it strictly as a horror film, it works on that level, but should this even be part of the horror genre to begin with?
I got you. No, like it's got its foot in two different genres.
Yeah.
And that's difficult.
Yeah.
That's really difficult to pull off.
So that's what I kind of came away after the film thinking is like,
yeah,
okay, I don't
so
hate it.
Hold on,
I don't
thought
love
of
it, but I don't. Yeah,
I thought of
go
a
ahead.
good analogy here. So you said it was kind of like Midsummer in that.
Right.
That movie is a horror movie.
It's a horror movie, yeah.
You know? And what's the message of that movie, if there is one? Like, we should hate Scandinavian pagan folk?
Exactly.
You know what I mean? So it's
Right.
like the overall message is still just like a crazy horror story. It doesn't carry this much larger kind of pick a side type of thing. I don't know. I don't know if it's pick a side, but like just so much baggage that this country has. So much.
Well, it definitely asks the question, like you said. It asks the question, these are their customs. This is what they do. Should we hate them because they did this?
And this movie is like, these are the customs. This is what they did. And
yeah. And
absolutely,
it's the same thing.
it's hate to be hated, you know?
Yeah.
And 100%, you know? But
right.
Yeah, I don't know. It's tough. It makes you uncomfortable, and that's the point of all this shit, right? To make you uncomfortable. But
and we don't have to like open up a bag of worms here. These are just kind of observations I had.
Yeah, and we have to kind of fill here a bit because we can't just run through the movie and give away the story and stuff. So
yeah,
but I get what you're saying. I think as a horror movie, it does work much better. But it like cuts kind of like Irresistible, kind of cut really deep from like a political thing. Like it slapped you in the face with how ridiculous things are. This movie kind of does the same thing too.
Right.
And you don't want to be giving people ideas, right? Like that's, exactly. You don't want to be giving some fucking giant group of people ideas.
Yeah, well, see, that's the thing. Like, that's why the second half of the film, I was like, all right, this works awesome as a horror film because this whole scenario is ridiculous and would never happen. But then you sit back and you're like, it couldn't happen, right?
Yeah, exactly. Right. That's
So-
the slap in the face. It's like, well,
Yeah.
that maybe that's not as far fetched, right? I don't know.
Yeah. So that's where my confusion kind of comes from. It's like,
It's really ugly, dude. It's like it shows. It's like it shows the all Americans, especially just like the ugly mirror of your nation's past, and how close it is. You know, in the mirror or in the rear view, or if it's not. That's kind of the message, and that's kind of like a slap in the face.
right. And I guess what I'll say too
Like a bit
is that,
depressing, right? A depressing
Yeah.
message.
but see, I think that's also what makes this film kind of clever in a sense, is that it takes one location, one event going on, and it's able to do it in a way that gives like two different stories. So it gives you kind of that glimpse of the past while also giving you a glimpse into the be careful, like, because maybe this isn't as far-fetched as it seems, and it all happens within the same event.
That's
And
pretty
that's-
clever, actually. That you,
Yeah.
yeah. I'm
It's
with
all
you on
referencing it's all referencing a singular event, place, and time. And it's not this weird like back and forth between time periods or whatnot. And that's as much as I'll say. But that's where I feel like this film is in a sense very clever.
that. It
with
is,
the term.
and it isn't, right?
Yeah.
You know, I wonder. It's really hard to just drill into it without giving anything away.
Yeah, I know.
But like, I wonder if there's a lot of rewatch, because I did catch quite a few things in the first act that I noticed as being off, and they're thinking back, they're dead giveaways now.
Yeah, right? Like even visually with some of the things going on in the first half of the film, I just felt like there's something off about this place. Like it seems like it's trying to tell me something, but I don't feel it's authentic.
Yeah, totally. And that's on purpose, right? So it's a bit of a slow roll
Yeah.
in that, but you're kind of like clued in the whole first 30 minutes of the movie, 40
Right.
minutes or whatever it is. You're clued in that something ain't right.
Yeah. And like I said, if you watch the trailer before you see the film, I think that's a little more obvious.
Okay.
But you definitely can feel it going in blind.
Yeah.
There's something about that first half that just, it seems off.
I got a question for you.
Yeah.
Having a movie, because we did a movie last week that was just chock full of clues the whole
Sure.
time. This movie is like that as well, but it's also bracketed by like brutal violence and racism that you have to watch and witness.
Yeah.
Do you think that takes away from like the figured out puzzle vibe, like the sheer kind of uncomfortableness that it makes you witness and watch? Do you think it takes away from like paying attention
To the details?
Yeah, because I was like straight cringing in a lot of this movie.
Yeah, me too. Like I said, that's where, for me, I really compartmentalize this film as two halves when I watch it. So like that first half is really hard to watch.
Yeah,
And there are little pieces in there that feel off, and I think I get that vibe through some of the characters, like particularly through some of the antagonists.
okay.
But then the second half, yeah, that's where I started to really try and pay attention, because once the second half kicks in, you realize that the film's going in a direction you didn't think it was going.
But
so
you realize that fairly quickly, though, right? It doesn't take a long time to really figure out where it's going, because I knew right away.
Yeah.
When shit starts coming together in the present, I guess we'll put it that way.
Yeah.
Because I knew right away. I was like, oh shit, that's kind of scary.
Right. And it kind of goes back to what I said, where does a film like this with these kind of themes, does it belong in the horror genre?
Yeah.
Because I would almost say that maybe we shouldn't be, even though like this stuff is very relevant still today, and
too relevant, man.
Yeah, it's too relevant, and these are themes that have been dealt with over and over and are still worth being dealt with on film. I wonder if the horror element takes away from giving another take on that important story and important like moment in history. But see, at the same time, it's interesting as a horror film for me. Like that second half, because like I said, it is something that's kind of bonkers, but
it's not that far-fetched.
It's not that far-fetched.
Yeah.
But yeah, going back to your question, for me anyway, it didn't take away from trying to pick up on some of the details of it all.
Cool.
Yeah, I don't really know how much else we can say, like, without going into anything.
We've talked around the story for 15, 20 minutes. Let's just go into characters.
Sure.
Because that's where it's pretty awesome, actually.
Yeah, like in terms of a film and an art, I think this movie's awesome.
Yeah, totally. I'm with you there.
Janelle Monáe, who plays the lead character in the whole thing, she is awesome. She plays Eden and Eden/Veronica.
Yeah.
And her performance is like, oh, it's so layered because she in a sense has to play two different characters.
Totally.
And the first character that we see in the first half of the film, her performance is so authentic and you feel the struggle and pain that she exhibits. But then the second half of the film, I love the character she plays there. She plays someone that's like incredibly strong and is a fighter. But I mean, it's related to her character in the beginning because it's all the same kind of person in a sense, without trying to give it away. So I like that we were able to see a range from her. We get to see like a range of emotions and the range of her acting abilities. And I hope she gets cast in a lot more roles because she did such a good job.
I was really, really impressed at how believable everything was.
Yeah.
And how much pain is coming across on the screen.
Right.
With her character. And to be honest, there wasn't one character in the entire movie that I didn't believe.
No. Like, there are so many characters in this film. Even if they had, like 2 lines?
Yeah.
They were just so well directed, and they're really good actors. It's a great group of actors in this film.
Who stood out for you besides Janelle Monáe?
Oh man, so I really liked Kiersey Clemons as Julia.
Okay.
I liked when we get introduced to her and just her intensity that she brings to that role. I really liked Gabri Sidibe, who plays Dawn.
Yeah. She's a nice kind of like a pick-me-up, a lighthearted pick-me-up in the movie.
As like Veronica's friend in the film, she was hilarious, and she brought a level of humor that I think was needed.
Yeah, totally.
I don't know how you insert humor into this kind of subject matter, but yeah, she was like a breath of fresh air. And then I really liked Jack Houston as Captain Jasper.
Dude, he was so evil, dude.
Yeah, like
I was going to say all the villains
mm-hmm.
in this. So Jenna Malone, she plays Elizabeth, and
she was like the creepiest character.
Oh, dude,
for me.
she was so creepy.
Yeah, like she was probably the most sinister out of all the antagonists in the whole film for me.
Totally. All of the villains are so spot on and so like dislikable.
Yeah.
I don't know, just such a good job.
And then one other character I will give a shout out to, one other actor, is Robert Aramayo, who plays Daniel.
Okay.
And you remember him in the film?
Yeah, I do. There's not a lot of characters in the movie.
Yeah. That was another performance that I was like, oh, shit. Okay, he's taken this to another level. Because you get kind of a surface introduction into what he's all about, and you're thinking like, oh, maybe he's this way. But then it turns out, no, he's totally different.
Yeah. Yeah, the all the villains are so hateable. They did such a good job of playing it. And there's a scene between Captain Jasper and Eli.
Yes.
How do you say his name? Tungai Charissa?
Tungai, yeah. Charissa?
Dude, the scene where they have their stare down is like so fucking heavy. and you like, that's at a point in the movie where you've basically kind of figured out what's going on,
Right.
and it's just so heavy. You can like feel all of the tension between them.
Yeah.
And it goes on for a really long time, right? It's like, what, a minute and a half, 2 minutes of stare down face to face.
Yep.
It's brutal.
Yeah, they're like the representations of opposite ends of the spectrum in this film, I think.
Yeah.
And, man, I just can't say enough about this cast. Everyone is so good. Was there anyone else that stuck out to you?
I mean, the little girl was pretty creepy. Arabella Landrum.
Yeah.
She was pretty
We see her in the
creepy.
trailer, too.
And the doll that did you notice the doll that she's
Yes.
dragging around? And
dragging
how
around.
horrific that is.
Yeah.
And, Jenna Malone stood out for me. Like, we mentioned it again, but she is so fucking evil in this movie.
Yeah.
And so it's so spot on.
Yep. Yeah, I was the most I was the most creeped out by her character.
Yeah.
Really, really creepy.
And the whole situation kind of is really creepy,
Yes.
right?
Yeah. That's why I'll go back to my comment again, where once you figure out what's going on in the second half of the film, you're like, whoa, this is nuts.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the same feeling I got when I was watching Midsummer.
Yeah. Okay.
Where you're just like, wow, this is extremely nuts.
Yeah, and this movie doesn't have any of the super weird gore factor. Like, it is fairly gory a little bit, but
Yeah.
the strange, like, sadistic things in Midsummer, like the wearing other dudes' faces and the weird like banging ceremonies. It's not weird in that sense. It's weird because it clicks in your mind when everything gets revealed. Like, holy shit, this could totally happen.
Yeah. Yeah, it's there's a lot of creep factor going on all over the place in this movie.
Yeah.
Well, just the setting too.
And I want to say though, but like Eric Lange, he plays a pretty evil character. He's a senator, right?
Right. Yeah, yes.
And even little things like that are just like, ugh.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's messy, man.
Yeah, it's pretty messy.
It's messy and it's too close.
I think every U.S. congressman needs a GPS implant. That needs to be written into the Constitution.
Yeah.
Oh, God, yeah. Really creepy.
Well, you just think about like the giant chunks of property around that part of the country that I've never been to, by the way. Besides,
you hear stories about this
Florida.
all the time, like backwoods, just
that's
shenanigans
why it's like,
going on.
Oh my God, that could totally be fucking real.
What's even more disturbing, though, is that in front of this whole thing is something completely legitimate, like that you see back there.
Yeah.
These like battlegrounds that have reenactments and things like that. That's what's terrifying.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if they alluded to it in the film, but it almost seems as if there may have been like tourists walking around and maybe not aware of what was actually going on.
It's a property thing, right?
Yeah, I don't know.
There's probably like the premise is there's like a big park set up.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a park with probably, tens of square miles or however big it is.
Yeah.
And you think about how big the plantation is in this movie.
Right.
And it's like, what? A couple hundred acres, maybe?
Probably, yeah.
And it's like,
pretty big.
think about how much land some people in this country own, right?
Yeah. The
Doesn't
other thing
Ted
I was
Turner
thinking,
own like a strip of land from Canada to Mexico so he can ride his horse from border to border? I've heard that story before.
Really?
Like, if you just think of something like that and then put it in the context of this movie, like, that motherfucker owns a route across the country.
Yeah, that's kind of creepy.
It's scary, dude. It's really fucking scary is what it is.
Yeah, that's really creepy. The other thing I was thinking of that you made me remember is I was just sitting there after the film going, really? The satellite imagery missed this this whole place? No one was like, that looks peculiar.
Yeah, but I mean, satellite imagery's picking up people doing horrible shit all over the planet right now and not doing anything about it.
Yeah,
So
you're right. Yeah,
it's even the farther you dig into the plausibility of it, it's like it's worse and worse and scarier and scarier, and like, God damn it.
Yeah.
We've all been going through 2020. We don't want to see what 2021's going to turn into.
Right. Yeah, let's cross that when it gets here, I guess.
Fuck. All right, let's talk about. So, all in all, the casting and the acting is so spot on and
fantastic,
so good.
Yeah, fantastic.
But the really sexy part of the movie, I
think.
Let's get into it.
All right, cinematography.
Yeah,
I really love how this movie opens.
I was just gonna say that, dude.
I think it's an eye catcher. The way it's shot. I don't care if they're trying to hide like little cuts here and there, but it's essentially one massive shot that allows you to get your bearing and see what's going on. And
it's horrific.
It's horrific. Yeah. This is where that horror element comes in, though.
Yeah.
And I think it does it well. We talk a lot about how in films, a lot of times when you have these slow zoom-ins and trucking shots, they can be awkward at times. But in this kind of film, I think they're very effective because they heighten that sense of suspense. And I think, aside from just the fact that most of the film, what's depicted in the film is horrific and dreadful, there's also that underlying theme of dread that creeps its way into the cinematography, into the score, that underlines everything going on. And you really feel uncomfortable the whole time.
It makes you so uncomfortable. Like the way that the camera kind of just almost like forces you to look at everything in that whole opening shot makes you so uncomfortable and just really sets the tone right away. Yeah,
and it's almost like the camera gives you a hint. Like the way that it frames things and the way that it slowly reveals things, it's almost like, don't get too caught up because it's not as it seems. It's like a weird kind of hint, and I think it adds a little bit to that, like some of the clues in the film. But yeah, I loved the cinematography of this movie. And even in the second half, like when you're in the hotel,
okay,
and you get some of those shots that are framed that zoom in slowly, and then you can see like pictures hung in the background of some of the characters.
Yeah.
And because the moves are the same as those that you see in the first half of the film, it causes you to be like, oh, these may be related. Like, this is related somehow.
Yeah.
Because the camera's telling me that it is, and we see some of the same imagery. So that was just, clever cinematography and planning.
Yeah, they weren't hidden. They weren't necessarily hidden clues, right?
No.
They were shown to you throughout the movie.
Yeah.
But there was a shot in two SUVs that was like my favorite shot in the whole movie.
Which one are you talking about?
I don't want to give it away, man. Like,
okay.
It's a really cool in a car, out of the car, into another car, and then back into the same car shot.
I know what you're talking about. Yeah, that was really cool.
Like in the downtown of the city with the car turning right onto the other.
Yeah.
Like, I loved that shot so much.
Yeah. It's a great way of just saying, like, how fucked up is this?
Yeah. Well, that's another thing. That's like another like kick in the modern nuts.
Right.
For us, right?
Yeah.
Make people think twice about just any Ubers they're going to take.
Yeah, if anything, this film teaches you don't go outside. It's bad out there.
It's bad out there this year. Stay home.
Stay inside. Oh, man.
What
I'm trying
about
to
you?
think.
Like from like a technical standpoint, like we've like established the opening shot was really good,
Mm-hmm.
and I like that shot a lot. Is there any other ones that stand out? Because I have like a couple more that I really like too.
Not so much for me shot sequences, but more so like the way some shots were framed. So there's some really like horrific imagery in the beginning, but the way that it's framed, I'll just say that it's a scene where we see a structure on fire, and the way the camera frames some of that stuff is it's like it's chilling and grotesque, but there's like a beauty to it too. It's awful in like the best sense.
Yeah, it's like a very
It's so effective.
very Tarantino kind of
Yeah,
feel
that's a
to the
good.
violence at the end of the movie.
Yeah,
And
that's
how
a good
they're
way of
shot
putting
and
it.
stuff.
Mm-hmm. That's a great comparison. What about you? What were some of the other ones that you had in mind?
There's like a big perspective twist shot that they do of her in the bed at one point
Oh yeah,
that I liked a lot.
yeah, that was a good one.
And I was gonna say also some of the furnace action
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the movie was pretty epic.
Yeah.
I really liked that part of the resolution,
Mm-hmm.
but I didn't like too much after it, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Without giving anything away.
Yeah.
The very, very resolution,
Yeah.
the last part was like really kind of intense.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
it
too
was-
much slow-mo, since we're talking about that. Too much
Mhm.
slow-mo at the culmination.
Yeah, that's fair. I'll say another thing I like too was I like the color play of the different times of day that were photographed in this movie.
Mm.
Like the day shots, the daytime shots had a really beautiful kind of spring pastel vibe going on with the color palette. And then I loved when things would shift to night and it's all kind of lantern lit and
Yeah, that really orange kind of
Mhm.
firelight.
yeah. And then even like some of the stuff at dusk, yeah, I just love the colors going on in this movie. It's really well shot. Everything kind of melds well together.
Yeah, it felt like a super advanced, like super high-tech shoot. Like all the shots felt really put together
Yeah.
and like really
Yeah, for
well
sure.
planned, especially that first shot.
Yeah, for sure.
It was good.
Absolutely.
And I guess with some of the effects, there's a little bit of gore in it, but it's like kind of dark, so you don't see too much.
Yeah, and I think the stuff that you don't see oftentimes is even worse.
Okay, yeah.
There's something even more brutal about that, and I think this film plays into that a bit. So yeah, I don't feel like they went overboard on gore just for the sake of showing gore. I think it was still effective.
Yeah, it was almost like they laid off the gore a little bit and went way
Yeah.
heavier on the emotional
Right.
pain,
Yeah.
because that's just hard to watch too.
Yeah, for sure. Going back to horror, I thought, now that we shift into score, I really like the score of this movie. When I'm thinking about it as a horror film, there's something like dreadful and chilling about the sounds of the music that underlines everything going on visually. It just makes you feel even more uncomfortable, especially in the beginning.
Yeah.
There was something like really weird and dreadful about that score.
Yeah, it's like kind of this like upbeat.
It's like unsettling, right?
Yeah. The score generally hit for most of the movie for me pretty well.
Yeah.
And there was just a few parts where I felt it was a little too loud, and one being the ending too.
Mm-hmm.
'Cause
Yeah.
the score at the beginning of like the big climax of the movie I thought was really good.
Mm-hmm.
And then at the end of it, it went kind of down the lane of super triumph
Yeah.
music
And
and long slow-mo, and I was like,
Mhm.
that's not the best. Think about, I don't want to give anything away. Never mind.
no, I'm totally with you there, though.
Yeah.
I'm almost like, I don't know if we should be doing this. But yeah, everything before that moment is really well done, and it's meant to unsettle you, and I think it totally accomplishes that.
Yeah, it fits, and it puts you on edge right away.
And it was quiet in the moments that it needed to be quiet.
For sure, like
I
in
think.
the kind of, the middle sections of the movie, there was a lot of just really deep, not a lot going on. There was like drums here and there and like really spaced out kind of stuff, and it was good.
One thing I'll say, too, that I liked before we move on is in the beginning sequence of the film, I liked that all you had was score. There was no audio. There was no dialogue. Even when characters' mouths were moving, and then you almost like morph into it where it just becomes dialogue.
Yeah.
And then the music fades out. And then it's like you get thrown into the world. That was really cool, and that was effective.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Because you're trying to get a sense of what's going on during that whole scene, and you see people talking, but you can't hear what they're saying, so it kind of like tricks you a little bit.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, for sure.
I usually shit on scores, but only really one spot it didn't hit for me in the whole movie.
Yeah, and I'm with you there, too.
All right.
I feel the same. All right, I think this is going to be the most complex part of this.
Okay.
All right, love, hates. Let's go with you.
All right. I think my favorite part was how everything was shot.
Yeah,
I think
okay.
my most love was how everything was shot. There were so many cool shots in the movie, and like it kind of mixes between time periods, I guess, but not really. So it has this really cool kind of historical vibe and then like a really modern vibe, and all the shots in both of them are really cool.
Yeah.
That's what I love about the movie the most.
Okay, cool.
And what I hated about it was the kind of like gut check it is.
Yeah.
For the time and the country we live in.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure it's don't be giving people ideas. I don't think it's productive.
Yeah, it's almost like it's at times you feel it's just way too on the nose.
Yeah.
Yeah. I get you.
I don't know, but I'm with it. It just makes it's tough.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, it's not a popcorn flick. That's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's not makes you feel like shit, to be honest.
Yeah. It does.
What about you, man?
All right, let's talk about what I loved. I loved the acting. The acting is great in this movie.
Yeah.
But I think I'm with you, too. I really like the way that this film is photographed. It's beautifully well made in that sense. Yeah, all the technical aspects, the cinematography, the sound design that we talked a little bit about, that was awesome. And that all tied with the score definitely gives you a sense of horror on top of just all of the blatant horrific imagery that you see. And I will say too, like, although at times this film seems like it doesn't know what it wants to be, the fact that it's able to tell two different stories while taking place during the same time at the same setting and location, I thought that was clever.
Yeah.
And so I will say I kind of like that for this movie.
Yeah, it's pretty well put together.
Yeah, I think it's clever in that sense. It's they thought a little bit of how they wanted to construct a story and not do it so much in terms of an ABC narrative. So I appreciated that. And then my hates, I guess in a sense that's also where the film falls flat. It's like you can do better by sticking to one side or the other. Like you can be the historical drama narrative with the great performances, but you can also succeed if you go full horror and stick to the horror. And again, I'll ask, like, does it have a place though in that genre? And that's where I'm not 100% sure, and I don't have an answer for it. So, like, I guess much less of a hate, but more of an observation and a confusion.
Yeah. Totally fair.
Yeah.
Totally fair.
That's the best way I can put it. I don't know.
Yeah, it like puts you in a place, it puts you in a weird place as the viewer.
Sure. Yeah. It makes you think, though.
Yeah.
It causes you to think. So,
What are you gonna rank it?
okay, I've been bouncing back and forth on this the whole time. And, like, I want to give it in between a 2.5 and a 3.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's okay.
So, like, I'll kind of cop out and say I'll give it a 2.75.
Oh,
Like,
man.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just, like, I understand maybe what they were trying to do, but if I can put my horror genre hat on, the second half of the film, I kind of liked the twist in the second half of the film. So I'll give it, like, a 2.75.
Okay. That's way lower than I was gonna go, man.
Really?
Yeah. That's
Okay.
that's interesting. I'm giving it 4
Okay, wow.
because I've been thinking about my ranking systems over the past few weeks, and I'm trying to like hit on points. And
Yeah.
this movie kind of like hits all of them.
Okay.
The acting's really good. The plot twist, even though it gets revealed to you and you kind of get it right away, it is clever, as you say.
Yeah.
And the shooting and like the shooting was great, I thought. And the only thing
Yeah.
it really kind of fell short for me was like the kick in the nuts contemporary thing.
Okay, yeah.
The being an American in 2020, kick in the nuts.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Yeah.
the part that really knocked it down. So I'm going to give it 4 bong loads.
Yeah. Like, for me, I'm almost
think
like...
it was really well made all the way around, but
Yeah.
it's just like a kick in the nuts.
Yeah. And, like, I guess my thought process behind the 2.75 is that I could give it, like, square in the middle because I think its strength is also its weakness.
Ah,
So that's where it's kind of like I give it a little bit more than the half because I think it has more working for it than more working against it. But the elements that work against it are fair and they're, like, kind of important. So that's
Yeah.
where I'm kind of torn. So I give it a 2.75, saying that I think the score that it has, like, right now on Rotten Tomatoes, in addition to the audience score, is a little bit low.
I think it's much better than that. Just from like, I almost feel like a lot of the critics on the tomato meter are strictly going from an emotional standpoint, right? Because
Yeah.
the movie kind of like makes you feel like shit.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just coming from a much more like category
Yeah.
standpoint on my ranking system, like, because it's beautiful, man. Like,
Yeah.
if you
And it's not to say that there weren't critics that didn't like it.
Yeah.
Like, there were critics that liked it. It's just the ones that didn't like it far outweigh them.
yeah, and that's because you dip the movie is in like we discussed two buckets, the drama and the horror.
Yeah.
And it's a rough watch. Would you recommend it to people?
That's an interesting question. If you're a fan of horror films, I think there's something you can get out of this. If you're looking to watch this film because you're trying to find a very, like, well put together, intentioned, meaningful film, I don't think this is the movie for you. Because you're just going to watch it and be like, well, this movie's kind of like, it's hollow because it's like this horror film that's not taking this stuff seriously. And I don't think, I think that's some of the criticism that's out there. But when you look at it strictly as a horror film, I think that's when you can kind of get past that argument a little bit.
Okay.
So I would say, yeah, I would generally recommend it. I don't know if I'd maybe recommend people go out and pay $20 to watch it. Because that's the
Yeah,
I think
I
that's what
paid
it was going
$20 for it, and that was going to be my deal. Like, it's worth
Yeah.
a watch if you're into this type of
Yeah.
movie, but it's heavy as fuck, and it's
Mhm.
you see some really brutal racism in the movie.
Yeah.
It slaps you in the face, and it sucks.
But I mean, yeah, the performances are great and the technical filmmaking is
Exactly.
awesome. So if
Yeah.
you like a movie that's well put together in terms of that stuff, this one won't disappoint you.
Yeah, and it does it's kicking the nuts. It's like a really kind of well-made movie. Bad timing, maybe.
Yeah, it's yeah.
I don't know. It's like, is it fanning flames or putting them out, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's
I don't know.
I don't know. You can make an argument for both.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
But you could, I would wait to watch it until it's free. Don't spend $20 on it.
Yeah.
Unless you want to. Then go.
Yeah, and if you like Janelle Monáe, I mean,
She's great, yeah. Like,
she's awesome.
I'll say this, it's worth the money if you, like, from the performances and the filmmaking standpoint, it's worth the $20
Yeah.
from
okay.
a visual kind of medium. But the story kind of kicks you in the nuts. Makes you feel like shit.
I think this is the most unsure of a film I've ever felt.
Mm.
I think it has more going for it than not. Yeah, well, we navigated that maze, I guess. I don't know if we got out of the...
No.
Maybe we're a little closer to the other side.
I don't know. Probably not.
Yeah, but these ones are, I think they're worth discussing. They're fun.
Yeah, for sure.
So, that's all I got. That's all I got, man. What about you? You
All good, dude.
All right. Well, that's been episode 40, and we just talked up Antebellum, and we hope everyone has a good week. We will catch you on the next episode of The Buff and the Blazer.
Peace.